Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Lori. I wanted to do a video today on holding two realities that are extremely important for us to hold right now. This message has been coming through in my sessions quite often. These beautiful, what I call star beings or high frequency light beings have been communicating this message to many different clients. So I feel like it's an important piece for us to hold right now, or to at least acknowledge or look at or understand. So we live in a matrix. We live in a third dimensional matrix that is, that allows us to experience many other different realities, many other paradigms and belief systems. And as we are shifting into higher states of consciousness, and as we are ascending, which is just moving into higher states of consciousness, remembering who we are, there is a reality that we are being asked to hold, which is that we are light beings. We are higher dimensional light beings in a physical form. We are not our physical vessels. Our physical vessel, this aspect of us, is holding the light that we actually are, even though we are at the same time a physical vessel, right? So here are these two realities. One, I'm a light being. I'm in a physical vessel, and I volunteered to come down at this time to experience this earth plane, this dualistic earth plane, only to remember who I am as a light being, so that I can remember what I came here to do, so that I can eventually go back to where I came from or some other place, some other consciousness. That's the reality that many of us are waking up into. That's the reality that many of us are stepping into. That's the reality that many of us are having a hard time holding, because we live in this reality right here, the third dimension. And this reality we have been living in for some of us thousands and thousands of years. And there are dense programs that we are born into. Dense belief systems that we are born into, that we are having to unravel, unleash ourselves from, right? We are having to uncover, unveil this reality over here. And for many of us, it has taken a very long time for us to begin to remember this. For some of us, you dropped right into your physical vessel and you've started remembering this right away, regardless of where you are on your path. For many of you watching this right now, these are the two realities you're trying to hold, that you're trying to juggle. How do I hold my normal life, going to work, having children, having a husband or a wife, going through a divorce, trying to figure out how I'm going to pay my bills, trying to figure out how I'm going to survive. How do I get out of the depression? How do I get off the couch and stop eating the crappy food I'm eating, right? Or whatever it is you're going through in your third dimensional life. This is reality. This is one reality that we live in. It's real. And we are starting to remember, and some of us have been remembering for a very long time, that we are light beings in a physical vessel. And that everything that we have been going through over here is not the absolute truth. That this truth over here, this reality, is just as real. It holds just as much truth as this. Meaning, I'm a light being. I am not just my emotions. I am not just my shadow. I am not just my physical pains. I am not just the struggle that I'm moving through, right? I am also a frequency. I am also a light. I am also a volunteer. I am also a being that came from some other system of light. I also chose to be here. And trying to hold these two realities can be very, very challenging. And this is what many of us are going through right now. How do I hold both? And we're doing this teeter-totter type of thing, right? And we find ourselves in this space every once in a while, completely aligned, remembering the light of who we are, feeling that light, letting that light expand, maybe hearing messages come through, maybe feeling your star family or your cosmic family, your galactic family, your guides, angels, ascended masters. And then there's this denser aspect of our reality, right? That feels a little bit heavier, feels a little bit slower, right? It's more intense in terms of emotions. It's more intense in terms of the physicality of it. And it has been overbearing or leading the way, leading the charge for a very long time. And we are starting to recognize that this needs more attention. We need to start focusing and putting more attention on this aspect of us. And how do we do that? How do we walk around in our everyday life and remember this aspect of us? Remember that we're a light being. Remember that we're not from this earth plane. Remember that we're volunteering here. Remember that everything we're looking at right now here and everything we're going through and all the chaos and all of the really potent, dense, dark things that are happening is not the only reality. It's not the only reality. There is a higher perspective of who we are and what's going on the planet that we can hold over here. That when you step into this platform over here and remember the light of who you are, and remember that you volunteered, and remember that you're actually being held in a physical vessel and you are not just a physical vessel walking through this earth plane, then everything that's happening over here is not so intense. It's not the end all be all. It doesn't have the power and the control over you. It just is, right? This reality just is. It's just one reality that we are experiencing as a multidimensional being, remembering who we actually are. And we can't escape this reality. We cannot leave the matrix right now, right? You have to be able to vibrate at such a high frequency that you can actually escape this sort of third dimensional matrix and remain in this higher frequency. For 99.9% of us, we can't escape it yet, right? And so we have to be in it. We can't get upset over it. We can't fight it. We can't, we have to just let it just is. It's the matrix. It's the third dimension. It's why you came down into your physical body. You came down into your physical body to be in this, to experience this, to understand how does light fit into a physical vessel, and how does light experience itself, and how does light remember who it is? How does consciousness remember itself in this matrix? That's what we're doing. On a much bigger perspective, think about that. How does consciousness begin to remember itself when it is clouded over by a dense, dense, dense blanket? And there are millions of us on this third dimensional earth plane, all with our own unique light quotants within us, all with our own unique paths and purposes. Some of us have been here for the first time. Some of us have been here for thousands of years. Some of us have been on Lemuria. Some of us have been here for just a couple hundred years, right? We all have our own unique path, but we are all light beings. It doesn't matter where you came from. You're a light. You're a frequency inside a very physical vessel that's holding it. And the challenge that we're all having, or many of us are having right now, is holding both of these realities. I'm a light being in a physical vessel, and there's chaos and war and major destruction happening. And I'm a light being in a physical form that came down to volunteer and to assist. Right? Or I'm a light being that came down to just participate in this experiment, Can you look at your third dimensional reality as an experiment? As something that you chose to be in? Nothing is happening to you. Nothing's happening to you. We're not victims in this space. We're participants in this space. And as we continue to shift into higher states of consciousness, we remember this. It gives us freedom. It gives us choice. It allows us to not be in so much, what's the word? Suffering. Suffering comes from the idea that you don't have a choice. Suffering comes from the idea that you're stuck in something, that you have an expectation, that you're thinking about the future, or you're thinking about the past. When we suffer, we're stuck in something. When you step out of this, you see it from a big higher perspective, a lighter perspective, a perspective from a higher consciousness, that this is all perfect. This has all been designed. There's nothing wrong with this. Nothing wrong with this reality. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. You'll be able to not suffer as much. You'll be able to remember that this reality is here and this reality is here, that they both exist, that we're trying to merge them, that we're learning how to merge them, right? And to not get stuck or attached to either one of them. They both are. We are both. We can't escape either one. We're both at the exact same time. And we're starting to remember this one more and more and more. And we're starting to integrate this one. This is starting to become natural. This is starting to become normal. More and more of us are talking about the fact that we're from a star system, or we're from another frequency of light off of the earth. Many of us are starting to become aware of the knowingness that we are from some angelic realm, or we are from another planetary system, right? Or from some collective somewhere. And beyond all that, we are all from Source. We are all a spark, a divine, unique spark of Source. So this is just one minute, tiny little experiment in the big scheme of things, right? And we get so stuck in our third dimensional view, right? We get into this like tunnel vision that everything is here, that this is all there is. And there is so much more out there. There's so much more happening on a frequency and dimension that we can't see, on many different dimensions that we can't see. This is just one tiny little minute dimension shift that we're shifting into. The remembrance that we're a light being. There is so much more out there about who we are. There is so much more out there about what we're capable of doing as beings of light. So much more. The amount of light that we hold in our physical body is tiny compared to the actual light being that we are, because the physical body can only hold so much light. So our light quotient, the amount of light that we're actually holding inside the physical form, is between 3 and 10%. If you're a starseed, you're holding around 10%. If you're not a starseed, most of us are holding between 4 to 6% of the actual light that we are as a light being. Because our physical body can't hold our actual light. It just can't. It would jolt the system. And that's what this ascension process is. It's the integration of more and more and more of our light. And it's a very slow process because our body needs to integrate it. Our body needs to figure out how to assimilate the frequency and the energy, right? Which is what we're doing, which is why we are all being called to come down into our physical forms. So when you start to think about these two realities and what's going on, it's extremely important to start to shift out of this tunnel vision that the third dimension is all there is. And oh yeah, I might be a light being. Oh yeah, I might be a volunteer, but this is all I see. So this must be the only reality. We have to start to step into this reality more and more, even though you can't see it. You're not going to see higher dimensions all the time. You're not going to see higher frequencies of light. You're not necessarily going to see your own light all the time vibrating out from you, right? It's a knowingness. It's an innate, deep, guttural knowingness that I am a being of light from somewhere else. Some of us know where we're from, some of us don't, some of us care, some of us don't. Some of us are just trying to find the divinity and God within us, right? That's your spark, that's your light, that's the light being that you are. And the more you can walk around in your everyday life remembering this, the easier it will be to be in this. Because you won't take this so seriously. You'll still feel all the emotion and all the frustration and anything that you're going through on your everyday life, because you're still in this matrix. But you'll snap out of it. You'll remember the bigger picture. You might go through a day where you are really feeling and remembering this reality, and then you'll drop into this and you'll watch the news, or maybe you'll hear people talking in a restaurant or at a cafe or at a coffee shop, right? And they're talking about aspects of this reality that are going on. And your normal third dimensional self would usually get involved and emotionally get charged by it. But when you're standing in this reality of I'm a light being and I'm in a physical vessel, but I'm not my physical vessel, and I chose to come down here and I'm shifting and ascending into higher and higher states of consciousness, and this just is, it just is. You won't get pulled into the drama. You won't get pulled in to the chaos. You won't get pulled into the struggle or the suffering. And when you watch yourself going through your own suffering, your own fears, your own worries and struggles, while you're in it, you don't want to escape it by bypassing it, but you begin to remember this other reality. So you're still going through this, anxiety, stress, whatever it is, but you're also holding this other reality. I'll give you an example. The last couple of mornings I've woken up with severe anxiety. And I don't usually have anxiety, right? And so I'm laying there in bed with my anxiety, and I'm thinking, wow, this is new. I don't typically have anxiety. Tapping into what is the anxiety about? And as I'm feeling the anxiety, okay, and I'm laying in my bed, completely uncomfortable, I'm also remembering at the exact same time that A, I'm not my anxiety. B, there is another aspect within me that is a light being. That this light being is inside a physical body. And that I have guides, beings of light around me at this exact moment that I can start to talk to. And that's what I did. I started communicating with these beings of light that I work with. When you do that, you are moving into this reality. If I were to have just stayed in my anxiety, which I've done in the past, years ago, but I've done, right? You start to spiral into the anxiety. So all of a sudden you are feeling the anxiety intensely. There's all these stories that the anxiety is telling you. You're never going to get out of the anxiety, right? You're trying to dissect it and peel it apart and dive as deep as you can into the anxiety. And that's an okay thing to do. You can absolutely do that. But there is an opportunity to also remember that there is another reality that's going on at the same time, right? And you can start to pull that reality into your world, into your remembrance, and it will lessen the third dimensional human impact that we're having right now, that we're going through. It's not separating yourself from it or taking yourself out of it. It's holding both. Okay, so I still felt my anxiety, but I remembered who I am. I remembered what I'm doing in my physical body. I remembered that I have guides around me that I can talk to. Now, many of us can't hear our guides yet, and that's okay. You can still just begin to speak to them. You can still play the game until you begin to trust what you're hearing. Because I guarantee you, 90% of you hear things, but it's your own voice you're hearing, so you don't believe it, right? You're hearing things, but you think it's your own voice, so you don't believe it. Your guides cannot tell you that this is us speaking to you. They can't tell you that over and over and over again because you won't believe it. So there's no way for them to convince you unless they came down into your physical room and said, we're here, we're talking to you. Yes, that's us. So we have to start to trust what we're hearing in our heads, right? We have to start to trust that. So when you're moving through your emotional experiences in the third dimensional earth plane, start to begin to remember this other aspect of you. Integrate it. Hold this other piece. You're not pulling yourself out of the anxiety. You're still feeling the anxiety. But what you'll start to realize is you won't be attached to it. You won't be attached to it. You'll just sort of be feeling it almost like an observer, right? When you're in this other space, in this other reality, you're observing more. So you're observing your experience as a third dimensional human, and you're not attached to it. It's key. It's huge. You don't get attached to it. What's been happening to us for many, many, many years is we're attached to it. We forget this. We've forgotten this aspect of us. We've just forgotten. Now that we're remembering, because we're shifting into higher states of consciousness, we don't have to stay stuck in this. We can be the observer and stay unattached, but you still experience it. You don't shut yourself off from the anxiety, right? I still felt the anxiety, but at the exact same time, I said, hey, I need some assistance. Remind me of who I am. Come in and give me some messages. What do I need to know about this? What do I need to hear? And then I got up, took my shower, and moved through my day, right? And eventually the anxiety subdued, released, or lessened. But if it doesn't, if it's continuing to sort of be there, allow it to just be there, but try to start to hold this other reality with you at the same time. Because it'll probably start to lessen this aspect, this experience. Lessen meaning you won't be so attached to it. It won't be the end all be all of everything. Remember that we're shifting from one dimension to another dimension. And the only way to shift into other dimensions is to start to acknowledge this other dimension while you're still in the older dimension. So you've got to start to acknowledge where you're going. Otherwise, you're not going to go there. And then you got to start to acknowledge when you're over here. And we'll eventually kind of balance these out and integrate them and merge them. And what does it look like when they're merged? What it looks like when they're merged is that you're walking around in your physical third dimensional form, because believe it or not, we're not in the fifth dimension yet. 99.999999999% of us are not in the fifth dimension, because if we were, you wouldn't have this physical form. Okay? Your form would be much more light. Okay? So, most of us are still here in the third dimension, regardless of what people are saying. Okay? And there's aspects of you that can shift into the fourth and fifth dimension, but your physical beingness is in a third dimension. And so how do you integrate these? This aspect of you that is in a little bit of a higher state of consciousness, remembering who you are, that you're a light being, that you're a volunteer, right? That you're here to do this work, even if you're not doing it. And that you live in a third dimensional, chaotic, stressful, earth transitional matrix right now with duality. You begin to walk in your physical form, holding the knowingness of who you are as a light being, regardless of what you can see, feel, or hear. You walk in your physical form every day with that knowingness. You walk in your physical form and you experience your life. You experience your emotions. You experience your frustrations with humans. You experience all of it. And as you are doing it, you also remember that it is not the only reality that exists. There is a higher state of consciousness that you reside in, that you are now participating in as you're walking in this third dimensional matrix. Meaning, I'm in the third dimension, but I am not enveloped by it. I am not consumed by it. How do I react when I hear people speaking on the TV? Let's say you turn the TV on and you hear people speaking that you don't like. How are you emotionally, energetically responding? Are you responding as if you are in that matrix? Or are you responding by sort of watching it, an observer? If you can watch the matrix you live in as an observer, you won't have the same energetic reaction, the same emotional reaction. You won't get caught up in it. If you're driving down the road and there's all this chaos on the street and you start to get caught up in it because you are finding yourselves inside of it, can you remember that there's a higher state of consciousness that can you watch it? Oh, look at how we as humans drive cars. Look at how we as humans get frustrated with each other. Look at how I want to make sure that I'm not sitting at that stoplight longer than the person to the right of me. Look at how frustrated I get when somebody turns right and they're not supposed to. How much can you watch yourself in your third dimensional matrix as a human from a higher perspective? That's what we're doing with these two things. We're watching our humanness, our third dimensional humanness, from a higher perspective, and we're trying to hold both. We're trying to hold both of these. We're trying to remember this more and more and more and more, so that we don't get so caught up in this, so we can allow this to just be. We can soften to it. We can surrender to it. It's not that big of a deal. We understand that this is a process, that this is an ascension process, and that this is dissolving, and that this frequency, dimension, matrix is dissolving. And when and as it dissolves, it's shifting into this reality, which will shift into another reality, which will shift into another reality. That's what's happening. And many of us are starting to shift out of this density while we're still in the density. That's ascension. You can't just jump into this reality and never be in this reality again. It's absolutely 1000% unequivocally impossible. It doesn't work that way. Unless you ascend in your physical form, like Jesus did. But most people don't do that. Okay? So, we are here. We're shifting here. We've got to hold this more and more. We got to be the observer of this third dimensional matrix because it'll help us stay here longer and longer and longer. Why do we want to do that? Because these are higher states of consciousness. Remembering that you're a light being in a physical form is a higher state of consciousness. Remembering that you're not a physical vessel is a higher state of consciousness. Remembering that you chose to come down here into a physical body is a higher state of consciousness. Remembering that you volunteered. Remembering that you may or may not have an actual physical purpose to fulfill in this lifetime. Remembering that you may have volunteered for thousands of years. Remembering that you may be a star seed and this is your first and only lifetime, right? Staying in these higher states of consciousness will allow you to not be so attached, to struggle, to suffer the way we have been for so many years. Because we will start to remember and recognize that this is just one reality and that there are many other realities that exist, and one such reality that we are capable of stepping into is this one. And that's what we're doing. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So when you go about your day, your everyday life, Don't beat yourself up because you're in this matrix. We're all in the matrix. Don't beat yourself up because you're not completely aligned and enlightened and live, eating all the natural, raw, organic foods that you're supposed to be eating, or doing your purpose work the way you're supposed to be doing your purpose work, right? Don't beat yourself up over wherever you are in this matrix. We can't get out of it. We have to just be in it. We have to soften to it. And the easiest way to soften to it is to remember this over and over throughout your day. That I am a being of light in a physical body. I chose to be here. I volunteered to be here. Everything is perfect. It is all how it's supposed to be. And I am shifting out of this third dimensional matrix. How often can I look at the third dimensional matrix? How often can I step out of it and observe it? Watch it. Instead of participating in it in such an intense way that you get caught up in the struggle and in the suffering and in all of the other things that happen when we forget that it just is. It just is. There's no right or wrong about it. It just is. It's a third dimensional matrix breathing in that third dimensional frequency, existing in a place and time that holds duality. It's an ability and a frequency that allows light to experience duality. It allows light beings to feel itself in a physical form, encased in something, walking around in a physical form, which a lot of consciousness doesn't do. Higher states of consciousness, higher beings of light don't have dense forms around them. They can't experience all of the amazing emotions and experiences that the human being experiences in this third dimensional matrix. So at the end of the day, there is nothing wrong with this matrix. There's nothing wrong with what is going on in the world. It's playing out exactly the way it is designed to play out. It is shifting into this space. The collective is shifting into this space. But there are individual beings like ourselves that are already starting to shift over here. And shift back and shift. So there's two realities that we are beginning to step back and forth into. Where are you throughout your day? What reality are you standing in most often? Again, there's no right or wrong to it, but where are you? What are you standing in more of? All right? And for most of us, we'll be standing in this for most of the time. But can I hold this while I'm standing in this? When I'm frustrated and I'm driving my car and I'm screaming at the person in front of me because they're not going fast enough, can I still remember that I'm a light being in a physical vessel and maybe start to laugh? Right? Step out of it and start to laugh at the humanness of us. All the intensity, all the chaos, all of the ugliness that's happening on the earth plane is perfect. Most people have a hard time believing that, and they don't want to believe that, and it's okay. Whatever your belief is okay. Perfect. Your belief is perfect. Your belief is you. Well, your belief isn't actually you. Your belief is your experience right now. But everything is perfect over here. Everything is being shaken apart in order to clear. So the more chaos and the more mayhem, the more horrifics, the faster it's going to shake out. Same thing that's happening with our own physical transformations, right? We are experiencing a lot of emotion and a lot of intense shifting, uncomfortableness, because it needs to move out of us so that we can move into higher states of consciousness. The denser frequencies or energies inside of us have to move out, flush through us, so that we can hold the higher states of consciousness, the higher frequencies of light. When higher frequencies of light come in, they will push out the denser energies. And these denser energies, as they're being pushed out, will be felt. When the light shines on it, we feel it. Same thing that's happening over here on the actual third dimensional matrix. As the earth is bringing in and holding more light, higher frequencies of light, the denser frequencies that she's been holding, the quote unquote darker frequencies, darker energies that she's been holding, are literally starting to be crumbled and moving off of her, out of her. But as it's happening, there is a light being shined so brightly on these darker or denser energies, belief systems, paradigms, emotions, collective consciousnesses. The light is shining on them. As more light comes in, more light's going to shine on them. And the more the light shines on them, the more it is literally breaking up that dense, dark energy, and it's falling off. We just don't understand it. No one's telling us that. We can't see it. All we can see is the matrix. All we can see is humans killing humans. All we can see is more destruction, more chaos, more horrificness. And we're looking around saying, how in the heck are we shifting into higher states of consciousness when this is happening? This is what it looks like. Can you hold this? Can you hold this as the earth is moving through her own shift, as humanity is moving through their own shift, as the collective is moving through their own shift? Can you start to hold both realities? They both exist. There's many other realities that exist. We won't talk about them. We can barely hold two realities. You want to start talking about other realities out there? Let's just start to talk about two realities. Let's try to live in two realities. As multidimensional beings, shifting into higher states of consciousness, beginning to live in a higher state of consciousness, can you hold both realities? What are you doing throughout your day? I hope that was useful. I hope that made sense. If this resonated with you, please like the video or subscribe to my video or my channel. If there's somebody out there that you know of that would really benefit from listening to this message, please pass it on to them. And leave a comment down below if this resonated or didn't resonate with you, however you felt about it. I think at the end of the day, the intention that I had for this video and for all of us is to remember that there isn't just this reality right now, and that it's challenging for us to hold both. It can be very challenging to hold both when you're trying to pay your rent and make ends meet and move through some sort of a relationship struggle, or feel a lot of anxiety and fear and loneliness, right? We're in this all. We're all in this matrix feeling it. Nobody's out of this. But can you also begin to hold this other component of who you are over and over and over? that you absolutely, unequivocally, 1000% are a being of light in a physical vessel that volunteered and raised your light hand and said, "I'll go down. I'll go down and participate." In whatever way your being of light decided to participate. And regardless of whether you think or you don't think, you're doing your work. It doesn't matter. Being in a physical vessel is doing your work. Being in a physical vessel is doing your purpose work. Period. You're already doing it just by being in a physical vessel. Now, can you begin to hold that reality and not beat yourself up because you're a third dimensional human in a matrix? You're not escaping this. You're holding both. I love you all so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. If you have any videos that you would like me to do, any questions or any subjects that you want me to talk on, I'd love to have those or hear those. I'm always looking for new things to talk about. So if there's anything that you want me to touch base on or do a video on, leave it in the comments below. And I'll feel into it and see if I can share anything about it. Anything you may be struggling with, or anything you may be going through, or any questions you may have about your own ascension process or your own waking up process, or star beings, star families, any of that. I'd love to be able to assist in some way. All right, my loves, thank you again for being here. I will see you next time. Sending you all my love. Be very, very gentle with yourselves. Be very gentle. Okay, bye.